Okay, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, dear students. Hope you are having a great Friday. Jama Mubarak to all of you. Today we are going to start chapter 5, which is the research design. And the learning objectives of today's session will be to understand what research design is and why it is significant, and to appreciate areas of ethically sensitive in research design, and to learn how exploratory research design helps the research gain a feel for the problem by providing a background information, suggesting hypotheses, and prioritizing research objectives. We will also be having these learning objectives to know the fundamental questions addressed by descriptive research and the different types of descriptive research. To explain what is meant by causal research and to describe types of experimental research designs, and to know the different types of test marketing and how to select a test market city or cities. So basically, we have covered chapter 1, which was establishing the need for marketing research. Chapter 2 was define the problem. Chapter 3, establishing research objectives. And here we are today discussing determining research design. Okay, so what's a research design? Research design is a set of advanced decisions that make up the master plan, specifying the methods and procedure for collecting and analyzing the needed information. So basically, it will incorporate all the mechanism that we will be following to gather the data, to analyze the data, and then to come to some conclusions that we were trying to draw from the research questions that we had, the research objectives we set for our research. So research design basically is a master plan for all these activities. So it's a very important that we need to have a proper, well-structured research design to incorporate our research. Otherwise, a poor research design will end up into problems. And we need to have a research design that is not having much of the limitations. Obviously, every research design must have some research limitations. Okay, so a good research design is the first rule of a good research. Knowledge of the needed research design allow advanced planning so that the project may be conducted in less time and typically at a cost saving due to efficiencies gained in pre-planning. So like I was sitting with my one of your classmates, and there was some administration block, and I can see that student was struggling to get the data. So I said, what are you getting the data? What's the problem? So he said, like, the the companies that he has chosen, and they are not, the individuals are not responding. And I told him this is the kind of the problems that you would face and what mechanism you are following. If you're sending them an email, then you need to go make the phone calls. He said, I've sent them the emails, I made them phone calls. Then I told him, probably you might have to visit them. And he says, in the Ramadan, I cannot visit them. And that would be very difficult. And that's what I told him. Like, before selecting a topic, you must understand the whole research design. You should know who are my target population and what means and methods I'm gonna use to collect the data. What is like the level of difficulty to get the data. So if you do not fully comprehend the whole research design, you might end up into problems. Another thing which I saw in most of the research, that you have to acknowledge all the limitations that you faced. I have come across many research papers in which they say, like, they used a postal service to get the data, and then they acknowledged that during because of the postal surveys we cannot get the desired number of responses. Then they changed the methodology. They choose a convenience sampling design. They go into a particular kind of a population, and they select a sample. So the point which we are trying to draw over here has that this researcher acknowledged the limitations, and then because he was going for a convenience sampling as compared to a true sample that would have given him a better insight, because he was using convenience sampling, so his research limitations also adding because he is using conveniently available sample data. But it is must that you must acknowledge the limitations that you face, and you should be very truthful. Like some students might use convenience sample and might not be going to acknowledge, and they will say we got the data from the postal service. So it's not like the researcher should be very unbiased, and he should present the true data, and this will be possible if they will have a very good research design in hand, which they have already worked on. Okay, so objectives of the research design are basically to gain background information and to develop a hypothesis. So hypotheses are, measurable propositions in which you test these hypotheses and you come to the conclusion that either the hypothesized relationships are supported or not. To measure the state of a variable of interest, so you will see like which are the independent variables, which are the dependent variables, what is their relationship, to test hypotheses that specify the relationship between two or more variables. Okay, research design a caution. Like in many cases, research is an iterative process. Like as we talked about, research is a learning process. Like the researcher has to be unbiased in the whole process, and he should be willing to experience new kinds of findings, and he should be whenever he gets a new kind of findings, he should modify his mechanism, and that is his learning. Because most of the time when I see students, they give like 5, 10 hypotheses, and then they conduct the research and they find all the hypotheses are supported. So the basic question that arises is what is the need to conduct this kind of a research, because it suggests that all the phenomena that we are trying to study, they are well established. So there's nothing new in this whole study. And that's why most of the researchers, they find their research getting published because they were either getting a very well-known phenomena, or they could not find no uniqueness in the study. So that's why it would be very nice if, for example, if you're trying to study a consumer behavior in certain part of the world, and the relationship was hypothesized and proven, but we may not expect the same kind of findings when we are trying to study it in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We will be getting some surprised kind of findings, and then we can develop a rationale and supporting arguments and supporting findings to justify our finding. So similarly, the research methodology, as I had talked in the previous slide, you might opt for one research methodology, but during the course of that methodology, you might come up with a finding in which you will think like, I need to go and design, or there is a weakness in my survey, I need to improve upon it. For example, if you are studying about the consumer ethics, and for consumer ethics, you must have to have a first question that you should ask to the consumer, that have they ever faced a consumer ethical dilemma. So imagine you have already collected data from say 30 participants, and then do you realize that most of them they are not filling the questionnaire seriously, and then you realize that none of them they have when you ask them the question they did not understand the consumer dilemma or ethical dilemma. Then you are adding this as uh, pre-qualification questions for the individual, that have you ever come across an ethical dilemma, and then you will redo the survey questions so that any respondent that they have faced an ethical dilemma, they will be selected for the survey. Otherwise, you will be not getting the right kind of responses. That's in research we call it, or in computer science they call it GIGO. GIGO is garbage in, garbage out. So you will not be getting the desired kind of service completion. Okay, coming to the next point. Uh, by conducting one research project, we learn that we may need additional research, which may result in using multiple research designs. So yes, this is a learning process, and when you go into the, for example, you learn a phenomena that is needed to be further investigated. Again, coming back to the ethical dilemmas, you learn that there are certain things which are not being explained properly by the respondents. So I need to dig deep down into this phenomena. So probably you will design one method that was a survey, and another method that you might go for, say, interviewing survey. So, so you can design two kind of research design. Okay. So you can add survey plus interviews. Okay, so basically there are three types of research design. One we call it exploratory, another one is descriptive, and the third one is the causal. Let's see what these are. Yes, Nawaf, you want to ask a question?
Doctor, which one of the type of research design is the strongest one?
Sorry, come again. Which one is the best one?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's a good question. Basically, it will be decided upon, and this is the very basic question that we will be looking for when we'll be designing the research, and that will be derived from the basic philosophical discussions on the nature of the study that we are going to conduct. Okay, so that goes into ontology, cryptology, and this kind of a discussion where we will be looking at that if this phenomena is like qualitative in nature or is it quantitative in nature, how much this phenomena has already been explored. So that if you will set this discussion over there, you will like as I take the examples of the ethics. So we will see there will be two types of discussions on this. So let me be very specific. So if we are talking about ethics, okay. Now there can be two arguments. Do you think ethics, we can measure the ethics or we cannot measure the ethics? What is your opinion on ethics? Can we measure the ethics or we cannot measure the ethics? So let me like go with the example. Yes, Nawaf, can we measure it?
Maybe we can.
We can't measure. Okay, so there are like both arguments on it. You will see some like Socrates and some other scholars, they believe that we cannot measure the ethics, but there you will also find a literature that will say yes, we can measure the ethics. So they develop some scenarios, they develop some questionnaires, and they can go for a quantitative, we call it a quantitative approach. And then if somebody he doesn't he goes with the philosophy that ethics we cannot measure it, they might go for a qualitative approach. Okay, and that is going to be more interviewing based or through observation, you know. So that's why it has to be started from there. Now when we have this clarity, then we will link this with these three kinds of research that we are talking about. Now we'll have to look like if the phenomena that we are going to study is usually conducted at an like is it we do know a phenomena that is already existing, or if we are going to study a phenomena that is uh, we are going to find a new way, like it has never been explored before. So then we will pick and choose among them. An exploratory research is usually conducting at the outset of a research project. It is usually conducted when the researcher does not know much about the problems. So basically, we will go and set for the exploratory research design, and we are just trying to learn the phenomenon. So again, coming back to the question that you asked, we cannot define until we do not understand like if the phenomena is already known or if the phenomena is already not known. So for that, you will do an extensive literature review, and then you will come to this conclusion. Okay, this is a new phenomena. For example, we are trying to study consumer ethics in the kingdom, so we will, or in Al-Hassa, or we are trying to study the consumer ethics for the luxury products, and you don't find no studies on it. So that will bring you to this conclusion that we will be doing exploratory research. Okay, now let's discuss exploratory research, and then we will go to the next. There was explanatory descriptive research, but uh, in this exploratory research, you can gain background information, you define the terms, and then Walaikum Assalam wa rahmatullah. And then you will clarify problems and hypotheses, you establish research priorities. As I just talked about in exploratory research, first step you will do is good morning, Abdullah. Thank you. You'll be doing a secondary data analysis, the process of searching for interpreting existing information relevant to the research topic. And you can also do with the experience surveys. It will refer to the gathering information from those to the knowledgeable on the issue relevant to the research. So probably if it is not your area of expertise, the first point for exploratory research, you are trying to uncover a new phenomena, it's better to go and talk to the experienced people of the field. They will help you to give key informations. So key informant techniques is gathering information from those thought to be knowledgeable on the issues relevant to the problems. And you can also do lead user surveys, like used to require information from the lead users of a new technology or what the phenomena that you are trying to study. Okay, so we can use case analysis, a review of available information about a former situation that has some similarity to the current research problem. Or another one is you can use a focus group, like small groups brought together and guided by a moderator through an unstructured, spontaneous discussion for the purpose of gaining information relevant to the research problem. So either you can use a case, like previously that thing has happened, and we will just try to link that with the new phenomena that we are under study, or we can use some focus group, means the respondents that will have some similarities, and we want to understand the phenomena. So we will use those individuals. We will put them into discussions. We might give them some topics, and we will see the discussion, like what they're talking about, and then we'll try to make a sense of these things. But this is again a part of exploratory research in which we are trying to explore a phenomenon that is not known. So coming back to this, there are like, you can go through the secondary data as we already talked about. You can use experience surveys in which you use experienced people and their feedback. They can be key informant and they can be lead user surveys, the users that are using this new technology or phenomenon that we are studying. Case analysis and focus groups. Now coming to the second way of a research design, that is going to be a descriptive. Okay, so exploratory research design, as we talked about, is the phenomena that we are just trying to unearth, we are exploring, and there's not much information available about that phenomena. Descriptive research is undertaken to describe answers to questions of who, what, where, when, and how. So it's going to be explaining what is happening. So we can also call it explanatory research. That is, we call exploratory research. This is explaining what is happening. So it is desirable when we wish to project a study's finding to a large population if the study sample is representative. So we can understand this through collecting data from a selected sample if we have a large sample population. Okay, so descriptive research, we can have two different approaches. One, we call it cross-sectional research design. Another one is longitudinal studies. Surveys, we can also use it in descriptive research design. Okay, so cross-sectional research design. Cross-sectional studies measure units from a sample of the population at one point in time. We also call them a snapshot. Like if you are getting a data through sample surveys, which you go on, say, in the market, you are trying to study the um, feedback of the consumers about certain products. So you can go and randomly pick the shoppers that are coming out from the same outlet or the brand that you want to study, and you can get the responses from them. So there are very good chances you will never be able to get the responses from the same sample. So that's why this is like one-time activity that we are performing. So sample surveys are cross-sectional studies whose samples are drawn in such a way as to be representative of the specific population. So we develop samples that a sample should be, say this is the whole population, and we develop a sample from where we collect. It should be a true representative of the whole population from where we are getting that. So these studies are usually presented with a margin of error. So there is a probability that this sample may not be accurately representing the whole population. So normally we go with like 5% margin of error. It means we should have 95% confidence interval. So the data we are collecting, it should be more than 95% confidence interval. So we should be confident that this is the right data that is representing this population, and the chance of error should not be more than 5%. We also represent it in point. This should be less than 0.05. Okay, so longitudinal study. Longitudinal means repeatedly measuring the same samples units of a population over a period of time. So imagine we are trying to study the MBA students. So we want to study like how did they perform in the first semester, then in the second semester, then in the third semester, and in the fourth semester. Okay, so we see what these grades going. So that is a longitudinal study. The same student we are studying in different phases of time. Since they involve multiple measurements over the time, they are often described as movies of population. So they are telling us something about the individuals that was not uh, known early, and that might give us a good detail of the individuals, which was not being able to be captured when we were doing the cross-sectional research design, in which we just collected the data on one point in time. So we get the data from one consumer at a time, and then we don't know, they might have gone to their homes and whether they are busy in their work, so we don't have an updated information. So that also depends on the type of the research which we are doing. Okay, so when we are talking about longitudinal research design, I would ask you to go and look into the Harvard study of adult development. That is the most longest research that has been carried out. This is Harvard research. They have studied for 85 years. Okay, 85 years on the same individuals. Okay, so it was commenced in 1938 when they merged two groups. One was Harvard college sophomores, and the other were disadvantaged youth from the Boston. And this study is still going on, to be honest. And they just found out that the close relationships are more critical to longevity and happiness than wealth, fame, and IQ. So what they did was they included questionnaires in the beginning. They did personal interviews of the individuals. They did medical records, brain scans, DNAs, and the initial study was like 724 men. They used 724 men, and now they are having more than, I think, 1,300 their descendants. So you can imagine over this 85 years, many of the people, the respondents, they might have died as well. But this is a most kind of a comprehensive study that is happening, which we can refer to as a longitudinal study. So I would request you to please, when you find a time, go and see the study. It's very interesting. And the best part about this study is that they just study like what are the things that will affect the longevity and happiness. And they have found that people who have close relationships, so social relationships, if you have friends and family, these people will be having long life as compared to you have a wealth, or you are very popular, or you are very intelligent, you have high IQ. Okay, so this is a very interesting human study that you must definitely go and see its details. Okay, so descriptive research studies, they can be continuous panels. You can ask panel members the same questions on each panel measurements. Uh, you can use a discontinuous panels. You can use various questions from one panel measurement to the next. Like you asked one phenomena from one panel, because the panel when you're choosing, they have the same kind of characteristics, like in your class. So most of you are you have done your bachelor's, so most of you will be well versed in communication, you belong to the same region. So we can use one variable to study from one panel, or we can discontinue. Sometimes we can do it because of the social desirability bias. Sometimes people will not tell you the whole truth. So these discontinuous panels, these are sometimes referred to as omnibus panels. Omnibus means including or converting many things or classes. So you disconnect the total research into small portions and you get the data from the panel members. Discontinuous panels are demographically matched to some large entity, amplifying representativeness. And discontinuous panels represent sources of information that may be quickly accessed from a wide variety of purposes. So it again, everything in the research depends on the purpose. So what is your purpose of the research? So I guess if your purpose of the research is that there are two phenomena, they are very closely linked with each other, and I do not want my respondents to be thinking that this one phenomena is creating the another one. So that's why you might use one kind of questionnaire from one type of participants, and then you ask another type of questionnaires from another participant, and then you make a connection by yourself as a researcher. Uh, because if they understand the phenomena, that they will, if for instance they give you a social desirable bias, they are not giving you the real feedback. So that can be an issue for the research. For example, if you ask someone, uh, do you smoke? And they say like, it doesn't look, if I tell them that I smoke, so it will make a bad image of me. So they will tell you on your face that, no, I don't smoke. So that response is like, because of the social desirable bias, and they want to be socially acceptable. So that's why there can be numerous phenomena which you can ask through discontinuous panels to understand the bigger picture. In continuous panels, you can have brand switching studies, studies examining how many consumers switched brands. And you can use market tracking studies, those that measure some variables of interest, such as market shares or unit sales or over time. So this is what we're talking about, basic marketing research. See here we have the result of two cross-sectional studies. Which See here we have the result of two cross-sectional studies. Which brand of chocolate chip cookie did you most recently purchase? And you did this a survey, and you got like brands here. You have cross-sectional survey 1 and survey 2. So in survey 1 we have got famous Amos 800. In survey 2 we got like 35 responses in favor of famous Amos. In survey 1 we have 200 paparazzi found, and same for this. Nabisco we have 200 and 225 responses. In total we have like responses, we went for 500 responses in each survey. Now we can see like most favorable is 425, followed by Pepper Ridge Palm, and then 175. Okay, we can also use longitudinal studies. And as we talked about in longitudinal study, what we do, we are asking the same individual about the brand over different time zone. So T1 and then T2. But the respondent is the same, yes? So they call it we have one brand and we have two brand. So results of the two waves of longitudinal study, which brand of chocolate chip cookies did you most recently purchased? So famous about was like 50, and then let me delete it because Pepperidge Farm was 25, Nabisco was 0, and then we studied did the same, like trying to see wave 1 with the wave 2, and then we trying to find out like which one is more popular. So you see in wave 2 this is like 75, this one is like 200, and this is again Nabisco is 225, which is more popular in overall in both longitudinal studies. Okay, causal research is the third type of research we are talking about. This is may be thought of as an understanding of a phenomena in terms of conditional statements of the first form, like if X then Y. So causal research, as the name suggests, that what causes an effect on one phenomena on another. Okay, so one phenomena we have an independent variable and another will be dependent variable. So how the independent variable affects the dependent variable, or does it affect it? So there has to be a causal relationship, are often determined by the use of experiments, especially in the research, especially in the marketing research. You will try to see a changing in one phenomena and you'll see how it affects the other phenomena. For example, you put sales and then you will try to see on particular items, and then you'll try to see how it affects the sales promotion affects the sales of that particular brand. Okay, so let's double click. So we can do experiments in the causal research. An experiment is defined as manipulating an independent variable to see how it affects a dependent variable, while also controlling the effects of additional extraneous variables. So we are looking for, say, independent variable, how this affects dependent variable. While controlling for, say, the age factor, they can play a role, their gender can play a role, or their demographic can play a role. So these are extraneous. So we control for them, we might use the age factors which are like similar, or we use the same genders, or we'll try to control these dynamics in an experiments. Independent variables are those variables that the researcher has control over and wishes to manipulate. For example, are the level of ad expenditures in the marketing, or the type of the advertisement appeal that we design, and then the way we put the display locations, method of compensations, or salespersons, or price and types of the product. And here all of these may be independent, and we would like to see For example, an advertisement that we have put an ad, we have done a new ad, or we will try to see its impact on, say, sales of that particular brand. So sales would be dependent variable. So dependent variable are those variables that we have little or no direct control over, but a strong interest in changing. So dependent variable is more area of interest that we will be looking for, and we would like to see what is happening with the dependent variable, because that is our key concern for the study. Extraneous variables, as we discussed, are those variables that may have some effect on the dependent variable, yet are not independent variables. So they are not basically the dependent variables, but they affect the dependent variables, and that's why they are also being part of our study, and they can jeopardize our studies and the findings. So that's why we need to understand them fully. We need to understand like uh, how they are affecting our research. Like, for example, the participants' characteristics like age or gender, yeah, environmental factors, sometimes temperature, or uh, the noise, or the researcher's behavior, if he is biased or unbiased. So what we can do is we can go for a constant method, keeping factors consistent across group. Like we can use the same like a class, the same room, or sometimes we can use for randomization, like we can assign randomly the participant to distributive individual different evenly. For example, if you are standing outside the shopping mall and you try to be getting a real kind of a data, so you might give the survey to every fifth uh, person that is coming out from the shopping mall carrying the handbag, or the shopping bags. Or sometimes we can go with a matching, like pairing participants with similar characteristics, so that we cannot get this problem. These extraneous variables can also have a confounding variable effect. If an extraneous variable is not controlled and systematically changes with the independent variable, it becomes a confounding variable, and it will be ruining the study's validity. So the study's validity is the most important aspect. So that's why we need to understand and control for these extraneous variables, as they will affect our research adversely. Experimental design is a procedure for devising an experiment setting that such that a change in a dependent variable may be attributed solely to the change in the independent variable, and controlling for the other external variables. There we got an example in which we are just trying to find out what is an ideal location for the snacks section, which we try to establish in our store shopper section. So we have got an example of a store, and here we have got a flow of the customers. So you can see from the flow of the customers can they are entering from this design, so they might follow this route, and obviously they will go at least this much, and then they might take left, or they might go right away, and they might take a next left, or they might go straight to the aisle and go from the last, and they come back. And when they go enter from here, they might not use the first aisle, they might go from the second aisle, and then they might take a left and they can come here. Okay, so keeping in view this flow, let me delete these lines. We can safely say that over here there can be an ideal location for the snacks section. So this is the middle of this shopping mall, and you can see that if you will place it here, you will have good chances of the customers getting there. Your business can get good profit. How we done it? Like this graph tells us that the flow that we have derived, and you can do the observations of the consumers, of the shoppers, and this we have designed is basically based on the data, and then we are coming up with this location, that this location is going to be the ideal because we saw the data and we see how many shoppers are moving and what is their flow of direction, and then we can decide the ideal location. Okay, so there are some samples that we use in the experiment design, like we use O for measurements or observations of a dependent variable. Okay, so the number of times this thing happens. X is basically manipulation or change of an independent variable, and R is a random assignment of a subject to the experimental and control group, and E is an experimental effect, change in the dependent variable due to the independent variable. Okay, so we can do a pre-test or a post-test. A pre-test refers to the measurement of the dependent variable taken prior to changing the independent variable. Why this is important? Because this will tell us how much effect has happened after the experiment that we conducted. For example, we're trying to see an effect of a training of the on the employee's behavior. So we are basically interested to see, first of all, we would like to see what is their understanding of the phenomena before the training has been conducted, and then we will see like how the training has affected their behavior. Initially say he had negative attitude. Initially say he had negative attitude, and after the training has done, his attitude has changed to positive. That means the training has affected on the dependent variable. Another thing which we can do is that is called post-test. So post-test refers to measuring the dependent variable after the changing and the independent variable. Okay, so this is the stage one. You can study at stage one, and then you can study at stage two, and then you can understand like if there was a change that has happened or not. Okay, in an experimental design, a true experimental design isolates the effect of independent variable on the dependent variable while controlling for the effect of any extraneous variable. Yeah, we already talked about extraneous variables. They can be the age, they can be the gender, how they can negatively affect on the dependent variable. So basically, it will not help us to understand the phenomena. So that's why it's very important that we understand and we develop a research design that will not be jeopardized by uh, you know extraneous variables. Okay, so another one is a quasi experimental design. Ones that do not properly control for the effects of exogenous variables on our dependent variable, and then we can see they will negatively affect on our research findings, and then our research findings cannot be generalized, and this may be one of the limitation of the study. So we need to control for extraneous variables, otherwise our research findings are not going to be the real research findings that we will be looking for. Again, before and after with the control groups, design may be achieved by randomly dividing subjects of the experiment into two groups. One we call them the control groups, another one we call them the experiment group. Okay. What is a control group? Basically, you have a control of extraneous variables, typically achieved by use of a second group of subjects. So you can use two kinds of groups. So let's say you can make two groups. Two groups of respondents. They have the same kind of characteristics. Like you have two sections. So in one section we conduct the experiment, and another section we take them as a control. The experimental group is the group that has been exposed to the changes in the independent variable. So for example, your section, which is say section 1 of, and this is section 2, that has been exposed to say ethical training. And there's a section 2, they have not been given no training. So then we will try to say we conduct a survey or we do an experiment, and we'll try to find the findings. And this finding will tell us that how much there's a difference of the training, and that has affected the behavior of the group. So the key difference and the details are that the experimental group receives the specific treatments like medications or variables being tested, and the control group does not receive this treatment if we are doing for some say medical treatment. So we take them as a baseline or comparison point, because this control group has not experienced nothing. So comparing the two allows researchers to isolate the effects of independent variables. So experimental group basically is subjected to independent variables, like in hospitals, say there's a new medication, you try to test the new medication. So you will be testing on the experiment group, or you are trying to test the new fertilizers, or you are trying to test the new teaching method. So again, as I give you the example, on your section, we do the new teaching method. Say we are going for a case study, and for the other section, we just go with the normal lecture. So the other group, section 2, would be receive no treatment, like they will just be treated as normal lectures. And if you are doing it for, say, medical purposes, we call it a placebo, like they might be given some sugar pill or some standard treatment. Basically, the purpose of this control and experimental groups uh, is to check the normal baseline, like what is the difference of independent variable, like the medicines that we are giving or the new training method that we are doing is on the outcome. So this is important, that we should keep those two groups separately. One is called experimental group, and another one is called control group. So how valid are the experiments? Any experiment is valid if the following are true. The observed changes in the dependent variable is due to the independent variable. So there has to be a validity is the most important aspect of our research, and we have to understand that this is the independent variable that is causing this dependent variable, a change in the dependent variable. And if it is rightly connected, then it means that the research is valid. But if this is not connected, and there are some other variables that are also affecting, and probably we were unable to understand the real phenomenon, then this is not the right of a kind of a research. For example, if somebody is trying to see a comparison of, say, death rate in kingdom with the ice cream consumption. So ice cream linked with deaths, and if God forbid both are increasing, say in June, July, August, then how safely you can predict like ice cream is the cause for the death? So there is no connection between them. So we cannot say like ice cream is the cause of the death. So there can be numerous other factors that we need to link it to. So that's why we need to understand the phenomena. We need to understand and link the right kind of independent variable that are linked. The results of experiment apply to a real world. So outside the experiments. So whatever research we do, for say we do in the labs or we do in the real world, its findings should be lead us to apply in the real world. So if we cannot apply it in the real world, we cannot generalize a research, then this research is not a valid research. How valid are experiments? Two forms of validity are used to assess the validity of the research. One is internal validity and another one is external validity. Internal validity is concerned with the extent to which the change in the dependent variable is actually due to the change in the independent variable. As I gave you the example of the ice cream usage and the death, so we cannot understand that ice cream is the cause of the death in the kingdom. So that is not a valid research. External validity refers to the extent that the relationship observed between the independent and dependent variable during the experiment can be generalized in the real world. So imagine you have established that ice cream is the cause of the death in your experiments. And now we need to link it with the real world. So is it implemented to real world? Imagine it is not possible. We cannot link it to the real world. This was just due to certain phenomena that has happened or because of the age of the individuals. So this research will not be valid. So people will not be, or the researchers will not take it very seriously. So that's why the most important things in the research are reliability and validity. So our research should always be reliable and valid. We can have laboratory experiments, as the term suggests. These are those in which independent variable is manipulated and measures of the dependent variables are taken in a contrived artificial settings for the purpose of controlling the many possible extraneous variables that may affect the dependent variables. So it's like the whole setting is in such a way that we are controlling, otherwise, uh, but this is not the real world setting. So you might bring in the shoppers in a lab and then you might ask their responses. Another one is like we call it a field experiments. These are those in which independent variables are manipulated and the measurements of the dependent variables are made on test units in their natural settings. So you can go to the shopping mall, you can change the prices tag, you can put a discount on certain products, and then you see the consumers how they perform. Okay, so we can do a test marketing. Test marketing is the phrase commonly used to indicate an experiment, a study or test that is conducted in the field setting. So main uses of test markets is to test sales potential for the new product or services, or to test variations in a marketing mix for a product or service. So test marketing, basically we try to understand the behavior of the consumer about a particular brand or promotion that we are doing. This is the final crucial step in product development, like involving a limited release of a new product or campaign to specific, like understand the geographic, how the consumers are going to behave, what is going to be their responses, uh, because this is actually trying to understand the consumers' behavior. So that's why we conduct the test market. The standard test market is one in which firms test the product or marketing mix variables through the company's normal distribution channels. Marketing mix, basically, we talked about four dimensions of the marketing. They are called four P's as well: price, product, place, promotion. So any like effect on changes of these variable, we'll see like if we change the price of a product, if we put it on discount, and then we'd like to see its impact on the sales. Okay, so does it sales goes up or does it sales goes down? So one is like standard test market in which the firm tests its products through a company's normal distribution channels, and you don't change the market itself. Another option is controlled test markets are conducted to outside research firms that guarantee distribution of the product through pre-specified types and number of distributors. So you might choose a different location, a particular city where you want to test through other distributions. You are not using your distributions just to understand the responses from the consumer and behavior. So these are for the marketing purposes. You can use electronic test markers to test the consumer behavior, in which a panel of consumer has agreed to carry identification cards that each consumer presents when buying goods or services. Nowadays, I think the loyalty cards, they can give us a better insight into the consumer, what they purchase. And in previously, we were using these electronic tests, and the consumers or the shoppers, they were wearing these kind of gadgets with them. We can use simulated test markets. These are in which a limited amount of data on consumer response to a new product is fed into the model. So it containing certain assumptions regarding plan, marketing program, which generates likely product sales volume. So this is just more depend on the softwares and techniques that we are using, and we use the consumer's data and we just try to predict the consumer behaviors. So lots of things are being done nowadays in data analysis, data analytics, and this gives us more control on understanding the consumer behavior And again, like with the loyalty cards that the companies are giving, that gives them lots of insights into the consumer. They have a real world kind of a view about the consumer's shopping patterns, and they can devise and predict their future needs. You can select test market cities. Like if you have developed a new product, you can you should basically have a three criterion set for the city that you're going to choose to test the product that you have developed uh, before you are actually launching the product. So you can pick and choose some cities. One criteria should be it should be representative of the whole population. So if we choose one city, it should give us the same should give us the same kind of responses if we would have done it for the whole population. Uh, Another thing is like its degree of isolation, how much this city is isolated from the other cities. If they are like closely linked, then there's a problem that you might not get the real responses. If the consumer from the other regions, they also go there, or they also get the information, or so basically we are just running this special campaign of the marketing campaign on the particular city, and it should be isolated. Third criteria should be ability to control distribution and promotion. So imagine if you cannot control the promotions and distributions, like you are you cannot control the price, or you do not control, say, the advertisements, then how would you judge this effect on the consumer behavior? So these are the three criteria to test the market cities for new products or services that we are going to offer. Obviously, there are pros and cons, plus and negatives of test marketing. Advantages is like test marketing allows for most accurate method for forecasting future sales. It allows firms the opportunity to pre-test marketing mix variables. And the disadvantage is that the test markets do not yield, or they do not give you infallible results. So there are chances that you might get not the accurate result. There is a chance that the test market which you chosen is not a true representative of the consumer behavior. The another problem that you can face is competitors, your companies, your other companies they are competing, may intentionally try to sabotage the test market. So if they know that you are going to launch this product, imagine you are launching Pampers for the small babies, and Huggies is also, I think, P&G. Both of them are. So again, so there's another pamper, they call it Can Baby. Okay. So when they see you are trying to launch a new brand of Pampers for the children's, Can Baby puts on the sale from say 500 Riyal to say 300 Riyal. So that will affect your purchase of the products that you put it on as a test marketing. Third option is like test marketing brings about exposure of the products to the competitors. So your competitors, they understand what you are trying to do, and they can imitate, and they can also provide the same kind of products. So that's also a vulnerability in this. The last one is test markets may create ethical problems because the kind of the data that you are going to collect, you might be using some gadgets, you might be using, the cameras, the videography, personal some data, so that may trigger some ethical issues that the company should be very watchful for. Anyways, this is it for today's research design. I hope you have followed this and understand this whole research design and understand the importance of a research design because it is a master plan. If you'll develop it in a right manner, it will help you throughout the process of the research. And if your research design is not fully adequate, then we might incur many issues down the line when we are really conducting the research. So we can stop today's lecture at this point. If you have any questions, you are welcome to please ask.